Oh, Sherry, this is Ken Burke. If you could turn your video off, that would be appreciated.
Thank you.
And just for all of those on the phone, I wanted to let you know we are just double checking to make sure that we have a quorum, so we are good to begin. I do see that we have a call-in user. If you are just calling in and joining us by phone today, if you wouldn't mind letting me know so that we can have you identified in case it's a task force member. I've requested that we unmute on our side, but you may need to unmute the phone on your end.
I only count 7 people thus far.
Okay. So we are going to just wait a few more minutes and maybe make some phone calls to have people jump on. And again, if you are not a task force member, we ask that you not have your video on.
Okay, good morning. My name is Ken Burke, and I am chair of the Guardianship Improvement Task Force. It's certainly my pleasure to welcome you here to this virtual meeting. I wish to acknowledge the good participation of the task force members. I'm going to go through roll, and I believe the following people are present. We have Anthony Palmari, who is our vice chair, is present. Bob Estalis from the Veterans Affairs is present. Dennis Moore from Guardian Ad Litem is present. Gina Rossi Scheinman, from Executive Director of the Guardianship Association, is present. Hillary Hogue is present. Former Judge Jose Rodriguez is present. Shannon McKenzie Miller from the Elder Law section is present. Viviana Lopez is present. Zane Smith with AARP is present. And I now see Sean Cadigan is present. And who did I miss who is a task force member?
JD.
Oh, JD, I'm sorry. We were having a good discussion. Who's present? Is there anyone else present who I did not call?
Hi, it's Sean for the 6-year.
Thank you.
Representative Burton will be on in a couple minutes.
I'm sorry, what was that, please?
Representative Colleen Burton will be on in a couple minutes.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
I'm on. Rachel stayed off.
I'm sorry, can you say that again?
Yes, this is Jose Rodriguez. I just got on. I got bounced out.
Wonderful, thank you.
This is Rachel Sadoff. I'm on.
Okay, thank you. Rachel, if you would put yourself on, do not show the video though, please, okay? What we've done, let me kind of give a review since our last meeting. Obviously, we had a time for the recommendations where we had our full day meeting that we met in Tallahassee in person. It was a very productive meeting. I want to pay tribute to each of the task force members for how seriously you took it, how open-minded you were to looking at to recommendations that we can have some consensus on, maybe not total agreement, but consensus on going forward. We had a way of deciding what our recommendation was going to be and then deciding a priority behind that recommendation. And so what Tom, Hall, and Karen did, and let me tell you, they've worked tirelessly on drafting the report to fit what they thought was the consensus, not the individual representation of members, but the consensus of members as far as the recommendations and the substance behind those recommendations. We then sent out the report to the task force members, and we had a week comment period. And during that week comment period, people did submit comments, and we certainly appreciate that, the thoroughness of your comments. And then I want to talk about what Tom and Karen did during that time. They took everyone's comments tremendously seriously. We had meeting after meeting and talk after talk and conversation and email exchanges, just not to judge people's comments, but to ensure that the comments were properly considered, and also the comments were in line with what the consensus recommendations were, not individual editorial comments. And I will point out that everyone has the opportunity, who's a member of this task force, if they feel that there's certain sections that, although it may be consensus, that they disagree with, or they have a different perspective, or they wish to add additional information from their perspective. We invite those to be put, and our first thing was to call them minority reports, but maybe they just see individual perspectives of task force members, where they want to add some additional color to what they feel the task force should have done. Maybe it should have been more aggressive in some points, maybe it's too aggressive on some points. And we will include each of those, if you submit them to us, as an individual perspective to the report. We will not, as a task force, review those comments, editorialize on them, adjust those in any way. We're basically going to take verbatim what you give us, because that's your perspective, and add it to the report under your name. So if you wish to do that, that's certainly a way for each task force member to be heard as their individual perspective. But we did try again, and I want to just say try, the effort was Herculean in making sure that the comments that were submitted were properly considered and were in line with what we believe was the consensus reached at the Tallahassee meeting. We met, to show you how dedicated we were, last Thursday was Veterans Day, a government holiday, and we spent 4 hours on the call going over comment after comment and line by line of the report to make sure it was in line with the consensus agreement that we had in Tallahassee. We did receive a member send us comments, and I think she copied all of you today on the report. I want to thank her for her acknowledgement of the hard work. I also want to thank her for saying that she's in agreement with the recommendations. She did offer some comments, and of course that was at 6:30 this morning, so we did have a quick meeting at 9:15 of Tom and Karen and myself, Anthony, and Kimberly, to just see how best we can take some of those comments are wordsmithing, and we'll be glad to add them to the report. And some have more editorial, substantive, and for those ones, we're going to invite Sancha to certainly include those in any type of member perspective she wants to as an addition to the report. But I do thank her for those comments, even though there were, this morning at 6:30, we're certainly going to do our best to make sure if they're wordsmithing that we get the wordsmithing correct. She did point out the Senator Bradley comment. We have a meeting, as a matter of fact, with her office to ensure that the comment on the front page is accurately portraying the Senator's good words. So that's where we are. Let me turn it over to, and we do have one a motion which has been properly sent to us. It's been seconded, and we'll consider that motion, but we're going to talk more about how the report process worked. I'm going to turn that over to Karen and Tom to talk about further the process so that y'all feel very comfortable that the process was a good one. Tom, why don't you go first and then turn it over to Karen, please.
Thank you, Chair Burke. As Clerk Burke said, we went through all the comments we received and really reviewed them carefully. A lot of them were definitely in keeping with things that were said at the meetings, but many of them we felt were contrary to what the consensus of the task force was. So we chose not to include them in the report, but as he's already said, if you want to send those in, they'll be added to a section at the end so that your position can be clearly stated. I personally want to thank Karen for the enormous amount of work she did. Originally as staff, I was going to do most of the drafting, but she went to Chair Burke and volunteered. And by the way, she's a non-voting member, so she doesn't get to vote on what she's helped draft. But she put an enormous amount of time into capturing the feel for what actually happened at all these meetings and did just an unbelievable job of getting a lot of great detail into there. So that's the way we approached it. Clerk Burke already explained it pretty well. I'll turn it over to Karen for any additional comments she has. But we will go through any that we receive after this. We'll go through them just with the same detail that we did with the ones we got so far and consider whether they should be included even at the last minute or whether they'll be added to a section at the end. Karen? I saw Karen there.
Karen, you're still muted on the Webex.
This is the fun part about using phone and computer. So even though it's not Zoom, it wouldn't be Zoom if we didn't have at least one person who stayed muted, right? Good morning, everyone. I wanted to just pick up where Tom left off with the comments that we received. Many of you contributed comments in all sections of this report, and if your comment was something that was not agreed upon in the last meeting, if it wasn't something that the task force reached a consensus on, we did try to ensure that those were included in public comments or in the other topics recommended for future consideration. You'll notice that the additional focus areas of concern and other topics recommended for future consideration really span a lot of different perspectives, and that was intentional. We wanted to make sure that we included as many of the important concepts that were brought up as possible without taking too much of a position on those issues, because the task force has not voted on those or had a chance to really flesh those out. Keep in mind that one of our primary goals here is that the legislature is going to hopefully pick this up, create a new task force, and carry on with this important work. So hopefully this will give them a starting point on some of these issues. But thank you all for contributing your comments and your edits. They were very much appreciated. And as Tom mentioned, neither he nor I are going to be voting on this. So at the end of the day, this is your report to vote upon and make sure that it's reflective of what we as a task force did, but also what we heard as a task force. So thank you for letting me help contribute and compile this information, and I hope that it is reflective of those steps.
Thank you both.
Thank you, Karen and Tom. And Karen, that's a very strange thing to thank us for all the work that you did, because it should be just the opposite. We were getting emails that I saw she sent out at 1 o'clock in the morning. We just owe such a debt of gratitude to her for the hard work of putting into words a group of 20-some diverse peoples and diverse opinions consensus, and trying to capture it as best she can. So does anyone have a question to Tom or Karen as far as the drafting of the report? And I would ask you to maybe just, I can see you, so if you raise your hand, I'll call on you. If anyone wishes to speak, I don't see any hands raised physically. Okay, we'll go forward then with the next step, and the next step is to consider the motion that's on the floor. There was a motion brought forth by Bob Astolis from the Veterans Affairs, and it has to do with the guardianships coming from nursing homes. And Bob, I'm just going to start the conversation. I'm going to I thought when, and I could ask Tom and Karen, I thought the way the report is drafted is clear that certainly a nursing home or a healthcare facility, a hospital, can initiate a guardianship procedure. And we don't disagree with that. We just thought because of independence that basically the nursing home or hospital should not be the one recommending the guardian, that indeed leave that up to the court, whether it's through the wheel process or through the other process, the judge appoint a person who's independent from the healthcare facility to be the guardian. But in no way does the report, I thought, prohibit a guardianship being initiated by a healthcare facility. And Tom and Karen, is that your understanding of how the report is written?
Yeah. Oh, go ahead, Karen.
That is the perspective that we were trying to capture here. It doesn't preclude hospitals or nursing homes from initiating a guardianship, but it does prevent them from specifying who the guardian will be because of the conflict of interest that exists. And that's described further on in the commentary of that section.
And I would just add that
So I think, go ahead, Tom.
would add that we drafted it that way because we clearly felt, and looking back over the tape, for example, we felt that was the intent of the task force on that very last day when the proposals were considered.
Shannon, and then the good judge. You're recognized, Shannon.
Thank you. Thank you, Clerk Burke. I do want to speak to this issue, and I hope I'm not stealing Judge Rodriguez's thunder here, but this is the Rebecca Fearley situation. And it's problematic, and we think it's still happening where facilities are having captive professional guardians, and they may employ them as their full-time job to be professional guardians for that hospital or facility. And so, you know, there are ways to have facilities that have people who do not have guardianships. What we've seen in practice, because this actually is a law currently, that you cannot petition as the professional guardian for incapacity and also petition to serve as professional guardian for that incapacitated person. What we have seen is that a facility may petition for the incapacity, and then a professional guardian may also file a separate petition represented by separate counsel. And if there are resources with which to pay that person, then, you know, it's not a conflict then. What we see as a conflict, and unfortunately what we're seeing in practice, is that, you know, petitions will be filed from the facility for incapacity. Petitions will be filed from the facility paying the guardian, and actually also being disclosed to the court, and the court will appoint that professional guardian anyway. And the reason that this is problematic is clear, that we do not want there to be a conflict when a professional guardian is representing an individual person. We don't want their paycheck to be coming from the hospital where that alleged incapacitated person may be removed and placed into a subpar facility, or given some sort of medical condition. We know in Rebecca Fearley's case, DNR orders were entered. for these people. And so, you know, we really need to make it clean. I understand how it optically may look for someone who isn't in this field, but honestly, this is a really important issue, and I do not want to see the report or the task force change its position on this.
Thank you, Shannon. Judge Rodriguez?
Ditto.
You're muted, sir. Okay,
Ditto.
go ahead.
I could not have said it better. I absolutely agree with Shannon Miller. It is the Rebecca Fearley. It's better to avoid any appearance of impropriety. And what we've got there is we've got the potential from the beginning of a major conflict of interest. So I agree with Shannon's point of view, and it's borne out by experience, sad experience.
Thank you, sir. And I just want to remind everyone, the deliberations for task force members only. Public comment will be honored at the end. Hillary, then Zane.
And thank you, Chair. And I will agree with Attorney Miller and Judge Rodriguez. You know, we see time and time again that hospital groups will petition using the same guardian. They've got the go-tos and they are compensated, and they really don't have any other guardianships other than hospital guardianships. And I just agree with everything that Ms. Miller stated. Thank you.
Zane? Thank you, Hillary.
Yeah, I would second everything that was said. Obviously, the concern is for the residents' interest on this. And, you know, what Shannon Miller said absolutely holds true to the documented cases where this has occurred in Florida and is still occurring. I know we've had legislation that sought to address it, which was fantastic legislation. But the task force, I feel strongly, must continue to drive this point of conflict of interest with guardians and skilled nursing facilities and hospitals to try to disrupt the pipeline that we know exists that still remains an issue today.
Thank you, Zane. And I wish to, speaking of legislation, I wish to recognize for her attendance here today and for her participation in the task force. Representative Burton, we certainly appreciate you. We know how enormously busy you are, and we thank you for your great interest in this, all elder law or elder matters, but especially with this guardianship thing. So it's great to see you here today.
Thank you, Ken. Happy I could be here today.
Thank you. Judge, you're recognized.
I'm just going to make a suggestion at this point that perhaps it's upon the rest of us, when we go back to our particular places, to work with a group such as WINGS or a local WINGS organization, working interdisciplinary network of guardianship stakeholders. And perhaps what's necessary is to reach out to these skilled nursing facilities, as well as to the hospitals, and have them come aboard and explain to them why what is happening should not happen, and perhaps establish a liaison with the courts so that this problem of looking for someone to appoint and to do that on a routine basis stops. I'm in the process of doing that in the Ninth Circuit, and we may wind up moving to do that also in the Second Circuit as part of the WING's volunteer work group. More about that in the future.
Thank you, Judge. Bob, you're certainly recognized. It was your motion.
Well, thank you. And thank you after that discussion for letting me raise this. I do raise this because I hear what everyone's saying, but one is, you know, I've heard only anecdotal information about this. I've seen nothing substantive that says to me that this is a pervasive practice in Florida nursing homes. And I am just concerned that this amendment is overly broad and it really does impede the nursing home working with its residents. You know, can you all still hear me?
Yes, sir.
Can you still hear me? Okay, sorry about that. So the thing about so what we tried to do was really to limit this to where the nursing homes can work with the resident who has no family member, who has no one in the community to assist them. I mean, one thing that needs to be understood is that we have many residents in our veteran nursing homes. We have veterans in our homes. They have no family members. They've become estranged from their families. They have no community supports because they've self-isolated. We are their family. We make recommendations for them. We make recommendations for them if they need to see a podiatrist, if they need to see a dentist, if they need to see a beautician. We work with them, and it's not that it's the nursing home doing this to enrich itself or to profit off of it. It is because we are their family at this point on. And look, I've been in the nursing home business 30 years, right? I am sure that there have been people in other states, as cited in the report, who may have found a way to profit this. But I've never been in a meeting where we have said, let's try to make some money off the guardianship program. Any guardianship discussion we've had have been is how can we assist a resident to get into the guardianship program and to do what they need to do. So when people talk about pipeline, you know, pipeline doesn't mean conflict of interest. This is a service that we're providing to veterans in our nursing homes. And so what I am afraid of is that we are making a policy, a blanket policy on anecdotal data, on what may be anecdotes out there, but you are going to prevent the Florida Department of Veterans Affairs, our nursing homes, from working with our veterans and assisting our veterans. And you know what? If organizations, if AARP could put someone in every one of our nursing homes to assist residents that have no family members, that have no one in the community to assist them, that would be great. But the fact is that that's just not the way it works. And so anyway, I raised this motion because I do agree with the intent of this. We do not want to see a conflict of interest. We should never see the nursing home benefiting from the guardianship, but at the same time, to put a complete wall of communication on this between the nursing home and the resident, I think is overreaching, and that's why I raised this. And I thank you for letting me bring this amendment up. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Bob. Thank you for your comments. We've heard comments from both sides. Does anyone have an additional comment they wish to make, or can we go forward with the vote? Seeing no additional comments, we'll move to a vote. Anthony Palmieri, yes, you're supporting Bob's motion. No, you're not. You're against it.
No.
Bob?
I support it.
Yes. Crystal?
Hold on.
Crystal's traveling. She is on the phone with us. We'll go back to her. Representative Burton?
I'll be abstaining.
Okay. Gina Rossi Shaman?
I have to abstain. I don't feel that I've been given enough information and this has been discussed enough to actually take a vote here now. So I respectfully abstain.
Thank you. Hillary Hoag?
No.
JD Peacock?
No.
Jose Rodriguez?
No, reserving the right to work with Veterans Affairs as volunteers to make sure that conflicts of interest are avoided.
Thank you.
My
Crystal
vote is
voted.
negative.
Crystal's having communication, so she texted me a no vote. Sean Cadigan?
Going to abstain on this one.
Shannon Mackenzie Miller?
No.
Viviana Lopez?
No.
Jane Smith?
No.
Okay, the noes are the prevailing side on that. I think under Robert's rules, abstentions count with the prevailing vote, but we'll list those up as abstentions.
Tom might know.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, may I?
Yes, please.
So I do want to thank the committee for at least considering the motion. And I appreciate the one member who talked about working with us. I would like to work with the legislature and with committee members to see how, we can, maybe there is some middle ground here that we can do to make sure that, we could still communicate with our veterans, but ensuring that there's no conflicts of interest. And I look forward to working with everyone on that as this moves along. So thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate it.
Well, thank you, Bob. We're now to the point of the report as a whole. And I'm going to ask everyone's, again, indulgence. I feel like the old speech that Benjamin Franklin gave about the Constitution, where there's probably parts we all object to. But can we look at the overall good here? There's parts, there's parts that are very critical of clerks in there. And, I swallowed hard and said, if it belongs there, it adds substance to the thing, let's go with it. We're going to take our knocks too in this. I didn't ask for any of that to be changed. I think if we look at it maybe with that open attitude, and again, I really want to emphasize if people want to add individual perspectives, we certainly welcome that because I think that'd be good. I know my good friend Hillary has very strong feelings that maybe the report didn't go far enough in a lot of ways, and we want to hear that. We want to hear that as her perspective added to the report. As far as I see Zane with AARP, she has some strong feelings on how things should go. If you have those perspectives that can help the report as a whole, give your perspective. I think we can add to the report those items, and I think that just adds to the color of the report. So that's where we are. We want to bring this thing in for a landing and do as we agreed, that we took the 10 recommendations that we agreed by consensus and put them in our final report. It is my intention to have this report printed with all the additions, with all the appendices. The librarian in the room can correct me, and with all the meeting minutes until and it will be distributed to each member of the task force, and we will give it to the key legislators as people like Representative Burton and Senator Bradley tell us who those people should be given. We're already, and the committee staff of the legislature, as well as the executive branch officers, so that there is a clear record of this as to what we're trying to accomplish. And so based on that, I'm going to be bold and entertain a motion if someone was willing to make it to accept the report.
Ken, this is JD.
Yes, JD, you're recognized.
I had one quick question, and then I'll be happy to make the motion on the. Is there a deadline on the supplemental minority reports, as you've called them?
Yeah, we will hold off on printing for another 2 weeks to allow those to come in.
Very good. Very good. Well, I'll make the motion.
That's a great question, by the way. We will establish that now. Why don't we say by 2 weeks from today, and again, I think we're going to call them member perspectives. Minority reports may have a pejorative term to it, like it's like we voted against you. Well, we didn't vote against you. It's just you're giving your individual thought.
So are you looking at the 29th or the 6th?
It's 2 weeks from today would be the 29th.
November 29th.
November 29th.
Thanks, sir. And with that, I'll make a motion to approve the report as presented.
I'd like to second that motion.
Motion's been made by JD, seconded by Anthony. This is the time for any discussion. Tina, go ahead.
I just wanted to clarify that the last addition that kind of includes the anecdotal testimony, that part is really, we're not really adopting that as task force. It's simply an appendix that some of us recognize happened during this process. I just want to be clear that when we vote for this report, what we're voting for is really just an overview of what happened during this process. We picked out 10 things that we think are important. We have a number of things that we think should be on the radar. But in the end, this report is really a summary of what happened during this process.
Excellent point, Shannon. I concur, agree. I concur.
Thank you.
Thank you. Gina?
I just wanted to state that I have to vote nay on the report due to all of the reasons that I stated in my letter that I sent earlier to the task force. Some of those main points being questionable references, resources, and anecdotal information. Some misunderstandings and misrepresentations of fact and law remain in the report. Some extremely important issues, such as the DNR process facing our guardians every day, was left out of even discussion. And then just my last point, and I have so appreciated to have all the minds in the room to be able to discuss these issues, but I did truly feel like we didn't have the time and the opportunity to go through the issues and really put our heads together and make solid recommendations. And that was unfortunate because there were so many opinions I wanted to hear. And we moved from thinking of things in an anecdotal way to looking at the way that these practices are actually happening. How can we help them? And just for those reasons, I have to vote no on the report. I just want to thank the task force for having me and all of the perspectives that we've brought. I wish there was a little more time to explore them. Thanks.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Representative Burton, please.
Thank you. My comment is really pretty, well, a couple things. One, you know, you didn't see my face every meeting, but if I was not listening, certainly my LA Brittany Rembert was. And I've read I have the report, and so I have a comment. Much as I hate to contradict my good friend Shannon, you know, it is a record of these meetings, but it's also recommendations. So that's really more than just this is what we said, right? These are recommendations coming forth. And as a member of the legislature and a chair of HHS, so I will certainly be, where I'm not in the task force, I would be one of the people we'd want to read this report. I will be abstaining from voting because I am the intended audience, right? I don't think it's appropriate that I vote on this. And having looked at the definition of abstain, Clerk Burke, that actually means I neither vote for or against it. But I really appreciate the input. I'm sure you all, those of you who've worked with me before, know that I have spent many sessions in meetings with many of you, along with others, and your perspectives are invaluable. And the report, I think, is important. I appreciate the fact that we have the report, because a lot of really everything that's in this report are things, quite frankly, that I have heard sometimes with more emphasis than others. So now that we have something in writing and the work that you've all done is extraordinary, we can share it with other members, other legislatures. So thank you for that. And I'm going to stay on today as long as I possibly can to continue to hear, you know, what you all have to say.
Thank you, Representative Burton. And also, I do appreciate with you and the good senator that if y'all were not able to participate directly, you did through your staff and you did view our meetings afterwards. So your active involvement in this task force is not only noted, it's very much appreciated. And I know, having worked with you on the elder abuse bill a few years ago, you have a real heart for these issues. So thank you so much for your advocacy.
My pleasure.
Hillary.
I'll try to make it as short as possible. You know, the definition of anecdotal is not necessarily true or reliable. I find it offensive that we have spent maybe not enough time. I do agree with Gina on that, but we have spent quite a bit of time. We have heard quite a few victims speak and to abstain from voting. I have to mention the fact that the Director of Elder Affairs, Richard Prudhomme, has been at one of the meetings. And I find that very insulting to the elderly and senior communities of Florida. You know, 2 years ago yesterday, a for-profit professional guardian, Tracy Samuel Hudson, was arrested in Pinellas County for the crimes that she committed, exploiting the elderly community and disabled community of Pinellas and Pasco County. She is walking free today. She has not been held accountable. And we, this task force, we had a job to do, and we did the right thing. And it's not exactly what I want, but it's a beginning. It's a beginning. And hashtag, it's not just Brittany. We have 2 families this week that more than likely their loved ones will be put into a for-profit professional guardians. They're basically hanging on to life. It's such a catastrophic situation. There are really good guardians out there, and I really give them so much credit. It's a tough job. Me being caregiver of my 91-year-old father, it's a thankless job. But there are guardians that are not doing the right thing. Maybe they need to be held accountable and the other ones won't do what's wrong. So with all due respect, to abstain from voting is just, it's quite upsetting. And I do agree to move forward with this bill. And I thank everyone for putting in so much time and energy. And thank you, Chair Burke.
Thank you, Hillary. Yes, Judge. Judge Rodriguez.
I'm going to vote in favor of this recommendation. You all know that I have reservations, and my biggest reservation is not to victimize or to re-victimize the victim. In other words, I will be writing some comments on the side to make sure that while we are recommending that the court monitor or the court monitor statutes be amplified or be developed, that they are not developed into something, a mechanism that will re-victimize the victim by making them pay for investigations into, well, misdeeds. I also want to say that I am very grateful for Sancha Why Not Brennan's input. I think that she has done in her email a very thorough, even though she mentions it was a very quick analysis, but she's done a very thorough and, from my point of view, a very good, worthwhile academic heavy lift in just what she has recommended and the points that she's made, correcting and stating that already there is law in certain areas or that the laws are misstated. I think I will embrace her comments as well.
Thank you, Judge. Any other final comments people want to make? Then we'll go ahead and move with the vote. Vice Chair Anthony Palmieri.
Yes to approve.
Bob Estoles.
Yes to approve.
Crystal Kenzel, maybe texting her vote because I know she's listening in. She's having an audio problem. She's traveling. I think Representative Burton has left the call.
I'm back in, Ken. Sorry.
Okay.
She needed to abstain.
And I know you need to abstain for the legislative reasons. That's a totally different issue. Go ahead, please, Representative Burton.
Well, that's exactly what I was going to say. A lot of respect for everybody on the task force and for the work that we've done, but due to my position in the legislature and my involvement moving forward, which I think will be great, I will be abstaining from the vote.
Thank you.
Thank you. Crystal, are you there?
Yes, I'm here, and I support the motion.
Thank you so much. Gina Rossi Scheinman?
I vote no.
Thank you. Hillary Hoag?
I agree.
You vote yes, is that what you're saying?
Yes, 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 thank you.
JD Peacock?
I vote yes.
Thank you. Jose Rodriguez?
Yes, with reservations.
John Cadigan?
Despite the issues noted, I remain optimistic that this report can do so good and will, so I'm in favor of it.
Thank you, Sean. Shannon?
Yes.
Mackenzie Miller? Thank
Yes.
you. Viviana Lopez? I saw Viviana on the phone. I'm not sure what happened to her. Zane Smith?
Yes to approve.
Sorry, did you call on me?
Yes, I did, Viviana. Hold on one moment, though, Zane. I want to make sure I clearly got your vote. Was it a yes vote?
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, Viviana?
About that, yes, I vote to approve the report, and I wrote a member perspective, and if others like to join it, I'd welcome that. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And thank you for your active participation. Did I miss anyone who's on the call who's a task force member for a vote?
Moore.
Dennis Moore.
Oh, yes.
Thank you, Dennis. I'm sorry I skipped over you. My pad's not very good here. Anyone else who I skipped over? Wow. I think we should take a moment and celebrate here, folks, that we got to this point. I can't thank everyone again for your tremendous dedication. I will again thank, because they need to, I can't tell you how much Karen has put her blood, sweat, and tears into this, and lack of sleep, and Tom. So we certainly, Tom Hall and Karen, please know how appreciative we are, and we're going to make sure that this report acknowledges your great writing on this and capturing it. Was an unenviable task that you had. And so both of you did it with superb excellence, and we do appreciate it.
Clerk Peacock has his hand raised.
Clerk Peacock, you're recognized.
I'm sorry, I forgot to take it down.
And I also want to acknowledge the support of the association, the Clerks Association, for basically funding this. These meetings cost money for us to have them at the different sites, and the technology and the staff time. And Kimberly, who I'm up here in Tallahassee at the clerk's office, actually, Kimberly, who gave us wonderful support staff help, and Sarah Sanders in the beginning. And I want to thank you, Kimberly, for all the administrative services that you did, and the rest of the support staff from the association, Kyle with his communication, and all the people setting up the Webexes. All this is greatly appreciated. We're now, unless there's any additional business, going to move into the public comments, and we're doing this. So we do have a list of folks who wish to be recognized for public comment. I'm going to ask if folks would not use the chat feature during public comment. If you have a comment, we would like to hear from you, and we would appreciate if you did not use the chat feature, okay? We just found that maybe got a little out of hand in the past, and doesn't, so we're ready to stick to public comment as the oral comments. And so I have 4 people listed for public, 5 people listed for public comment, and we're going to start off with Beverly Newman, and each speaker has the opportunity to speak for a total 3 minutes. 3 minutes, and then Dr. Sam Sugar will follow Beverly Newman. Beverly Newman, you're now recognized, please.
And Hillary, I know that you mentioned that. Do you know if Ms. Newman is calling in today? You're muted, Hillary.
She's on the phone right here with me. Her computer isn't working.
Well, just have her speak then.
Okay, and I'll start the 3 minutes now.
Thank you. As I was saying, I waited last time 2.5 hours to speak and did not wonderful, wonderful veterans and elders and disabled persons who are suffering needlessly when their needs are not being met in professional guardianships. And this can persist for years. In the case of Jan Garwood, for instance, she was and is very, very bright, alert, astute, well-spoken, and yet she was in a second story, a possibly 10 by 12 room for years with the windows barred, a very sick person next to her. She was denied kosher food as a Jew. She was denied the right to be buried as a Jew. Thank God she's alive. But Rebecca Fairley falsified, perjured herself, saying that Jan wanted to be cremated. This is just the tip of the iceberg. This is not anecdotal. Anecdotal is something that occasionally happens. You don't stay locked up as a hostage in a room for years on end, and she's not alone by any means. As an anecdote, these are human lives, and we must love and protect these people. I implore each of you as we go into the holiday season. Thanksgiving is imminent. I just bought my turkey, thank God. And I hope that all of you will be able to enjoy your Thanksgiving and remember
30 seconds.
Separated from their dearly loved families, including their spouses of 30 or more years. If my time is up, that's my holiday and everyday message to each and every one of you. We have wonderful people who are not being allowed to live their lives with dignity and safety, and that is a blight upon each of us and upon the state of Florida, which we cannot condone in any way. I implore all of you to reach into your hearts and change what is happening to these poor souls and to their families.
Thank you, Ms. Newman, for your comments today. They are appreciated. Dr. Sugar.
Good morning, everyone, and I want to thank each and every one of you for the enormous amount of effort, especially Ken Burke, and everyone who contributed to this Herculean task. The fact that it is a Herculean task shouldn't be a surprise, given what we've learned through these meetings. There are dozens of agencies, hundreds of individuals, dozens of courts, all of which have a hand in this incredible process that has evolved as what we know as 21st century guardianship. There are serious problems with guardianship, and this group has been exposed to a number of them. Not all, but a number of them. And I think that this group, this task force, will have quite a lasting impact on guardianship in Florida and around the country. Guardianship is big news today. A year ago, it wasn't. And the impetus and the momentum for change is in the air. And I'm hopeful that the recommendations in your report and your advocacy to the legislature will be taken seriously. But I do believe there's one thing that's missing. And I say this respectfully. The reason that Britney Spears is at least partly freed from her guardianship, she still has a guardianship over her assets. The only reasons she was freed are, number one, advocates, some in our group, some in the Free Britney movement, and the fact that she is a well-known international superstar. The number of individuals who've been freed from guardianships that have been shown to be abusive, at least by the public, in Florida can be counted on maybe one or two hands. We need to pay attention to the fact that guardianships are designed to last forever, and I don't think that the task force really paid enough attention to the issue of ending guardianships when they can be proven to be detrimental. Lastly, there was a lot of conversation today about conflicts of interest. And I certainly agree that conflicts of interests that are typified by the Fearley case and by others that we could rattle off are a serious problem. And I would hope that going forward, the task force that is created by the legislature, which will carry on Ken Burke's work, will include members from advocacy groups and create a system by which, without court approval, every interested party in a guardianship can be fully aware of the dollar flow out of the estates and the guardianship funds. If we can do that, we'll make even more progress forward. I appreciate the opportunity of having to be able to speak at several of these meetings, and I wish you all happy holidays and great health.
Am I being heard now? Thank you. Dr. Sugar, I'm sorry, I lost the last 30 seconds of your remarks. Did you conclude your remarks?
Thank you. I really
Yes.
appreciate that. Basically, what I was saying was that it's going to be very important for at some point for advocacy groups such as this one and ours and others to be able to create a tool so that the conflicts of interest that are driven by money and by financial conflicts of interest can at least be made visible to interested parties, because money drives this system. And lastly, I want to wish each and every one of you sincerely happy holidays and wonderful health.
Thanks, Sam.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Dr. Sugar. Dr. Teresa Kennedy, and Dr. Sugar, you've been an advocate in this cause for many years, so thank you for your advocacy. Dr. Teresa Kennedy.
Yes,
Recognized.
thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am, we can.
Okay, this is Dr. Teresa Kayaba Kennedy. I'm founder of Elder Dignity. I've been working on the issue of guardianship abuse nationwide. In the last 2 weeks alone, I moderated the Free Britney Symposium and helped organize the Free Peter Max protest. Florida is a retirement haven and should have a model system, but as we know, it is a hotspot for this crime. I thank everyone on this task force for taking time to make it better. My aunt, Dr. Lily Sykes White, loved Florida. She retired there after a successful career as an educator and built a home for retirement in Palm Coast, Florida. But in 2012, she was entrapped in a guardianship system. She had been driving, independently living and cooking and shopping and going to movies. But after being entrapped, she had no voice. And then in 2016, she was abducted and isolated. She was hidden from us for over 2 years. And we finally found her through private investigators, and we still couldn't even speak with her. So after 4.5 years of being isolated from a family of 50 people, many, many doctorates, many who have worked with administrations, very high qualified people. I'm a Harvard Business School strategist. My mother is a Columbia University trained journalist, but we were all blocked out in favor of the exploitation by the predatory attorneys. She died, Aunt Lily died on December 30th, 2020. They cremated her before we even knew she had died. Nowhere in the United States should this happen. So I ask that we focus on one, slow the flow. So slow the people going into the system. Two is closing the holes, and this is part of what this discussion is, but particularly the conflict of interest and the profit motive. We need fee caps. We need accountability. We need audits. That happened to my aunt because of her nearly $5 million estate. And in the probate hearing a few months ago, it was all divided up amongst the guardian.
30 seconds.
So I would ask two more things. We need to listen to the voice of the senior. We had videos, we had audio, we had testimony. No one listened to Aunt Lily. And then finally, we need a path to remedy, which we have not spoken about. So we have violations by this guardian, but no one is prosecuting in Florida. So I ask you to please try to save our seniors and create a system of all age with dignity. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Kennedy, for being with us today. Luann Fleming and then Sherry Johnston. Luann Fleming, you're now recognized. Ms. Fleming, are you still with us? Why don't we we'll give you a chance again, but Sherry Johnston, you're now recognized.
Yes, sir. My name is Sherry Johnston, and I'm calling from the great state of Texas. I would like to thank each one of y'all for taking the time to listen to us express our concerns on this guardianship matter. I would have to agree with Sam Sugar and Teresa Kennedy that the most fear that an elderly person have, including myself, is the fear that one day that we would wake up and there'd be a social worker or we'd be in a hospital knocking at our doors and taking us out of our homes and isolating us from our loved ones without our consent. Saying that, I think that one of the greatest transparencies that's not done in these courtrooms are videos. We are told not to video. We are told not to record nothing when these courts are open to the public. We have problems with people coming in out of state trying to monitor things and to keep things straight when a video will keep everybody on their toes. Most these courts, they make the family out to be the villain when the family has been there for years and years and years and know these elderly people. You take those away from the family and you introduce them to a person that y'all call a professional guardian, which has no idea how this family, the dynamics of this family works, which is insulting to the elderly person and also to society. We should always work together to make sure that our homes are intact and our families stay together. We have alternatives to guardianship that would work perfectly. The guardian, you take that family member out and give it a professional guardian. What does that guardian do? Does the same thing that our alternative to guardianship would do. They can put them in nursing homes, they got power attorneys, all these things that they can do that the family can do, but yet they are willing to take this estate and give to thousands and thousands of dollars an hour to strangers that have no idea what's going on with this family. I think Ms. Kennedy was right on that we had to have transparency, and there should never be a time in America's history where our elderly person should have to be fearful of their life or their savings or be isolated from their family because of a system that's designed to create profit to individuals from the elderly and disabled. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Johnston. Is Luann Fleming with us yet? Okay. We're going to go to Ken Goodman and then to Rick Black. Mr. Goodman, you're now recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Burke. I appreciate this very much. My name, as you see, is Ken Goodman. I'm a professor at the University of Miami, where I direct our Institute for Bioethics, and I am the director of the Florida Bioethics Network. I appreciate this opportunity. In fact, as a native and citizen of Florida, the process of this work and in fact of legislation in general is difficult, and so I thank you for your service. The issue that I brought to the attention of the task force is one that occurs I believe is a result of disharmony between or among a number of different statutes. In the wake of the Fearley case, legislation was passed which is being interpreted as requiring judicial review for individual DNR requests by guardians. In some cases, these are professional guardians. They're not guardians who are paid or incentivized by the case. They work for guardianship programs. And the need for them to obtain judicial review has repeatedly produced instances in which patients, the very vulnerable elders who we've been talking about, are treated against medical advice because of the process of obtaining judicial review. What I'm hoping by these remarks is perhaps some of the comments that I've sent earlier, Mr. Burke, and others might be included as, I don't know, friendly appendices or amendments, so that as Representative Burton and her colleagues take this on, they might be able to address this. That there are aspects of current law occasioned by bad behavior by guardians episodically and not as consistently as I see in my experience, that have led to the belief that patients need to be treated against medical advice. And so I am hoping that on behalf of the Florida Bioethics Network, which I should say has worked over the years with the Department of Elder Affairs, we developed a guardianship ethics curriculum, which is available for free on our website. We worked with DCF, the Department of Corrections, the Department of Health, a number of other state agencies. The current version of Chapter 765, which you know to be the Advanced Directive Statute, was one which we helped draft. The ethics community, and there is a robust one in Florida, is ready to help you and support this process as you do your important work. Thank you very much for the opportunity to share these thoughts with you.
Thank you, Mr. Goodman, for your comment. And, the task force is not supposed to comment on public comment, but I will say if there is a additional task force created by the legislature, I certainly hope you're given the opportunity to present because you have some substantive knowledge in this topic area. So thank you. Mr. Black, you're now recognized, and following Mr. Black will be Karen Berlin.
Thank you, Clerk Burke. First of all, thanks to the entire task force for their commitment over the last few months, giving us a forum as victims and victim activists to elevate evidence of wrongdoing and provide some input on improvements that desperately need to be made in Florida. Sadly, and I also want to preface my final comments with, look, we recognize that most judges are honest, good men and women who want to do the right thing. We recognize that most attorneys are good, honest men and women who want to do the right thing and execute the law. And most guardians are good, honest men and women who also want to uphold the law and protect the vulnerable and their relationships with their loved ones. What we have talked about is who judges the judges, and most importantly, who controls predatory litigators who understand how to effectively use the dysfunction of this system to create a weapon to exploit the vulnerable. The Florida Bar is already quickly lobbying to counter what this team has steadfastly worked on to create change. They still continue to elevate. We need to close more proceedings. We need to seal more records. And the reality is we're talking about exceptions, and we recognize this system did nothing to stop predatory guardians supported by predatory attorneys like Elizabeth Savitt, Rebecca Fearley, Tracy Hudson, Lynrod Douglas, Donna Moye, Cynthia Van Vliet, and others. It took them getting so outrageous in their actions that law enforcement finally took notice and took action. That is the epitome of a system that is dysfunctional. I myself was drug into an 8-hour deposition just 1 week ago at the expense of a wealthy Hillsborough ward as a predatory attorney, worked hard to make sure I understood my voice was not welcome. I've never met the woman. I don't know the woman. I do know the evidence, and I was to be silenced at her expense with the court's approval. We're here to help you, Ken, when you take this message to Tallahassee, and feel free to send me an email. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Black. Karen Berlin, you're now recognized, and Sue Melendi will be our final speaker unless Luann Fleming has joined us. We have one more, and that will be our final one because we're now out of the time for public comments after these people speak. So, Ms. Ramos, you will go last, and you'll be our final speaker. We will not accept any more public comment beyond that point. So, Karen Berlin, you're now recognized.
To report you, I would like to be. I still can be on.
I think that's Ms. Ramos. Ms. Ramos, you'll be the last individual to speak, but it's not your turn just yet.
Is Karen Berlin available? Karen Berlin, are you there? Luann Fleming, are you there?
Yeah, no. She's here. Go ahead, Karen.
Yes, good morning. My name is Karen Burling, and I was tricked into filing for guardianship over my mother by Miss Danica Scuderi-Carluccio. I sought protection over a third party claiming to be an Instacart grocery delivery service. Ms. Carluccio insisted that I contact her one attorney she offered me. That attorney was Ms. Michelle Spira, who advised me that guardianship was my only alternative. I should have been offered assistance in obtaining a restraining order against this third party, but that avenue is not lucrative in comparison to a guardianship case to an attorney. I filed countless complaints to the bar, OPPG, and many other officials and authorities. I always support my allegations with notarized witness statements attesting to what they saw. OPPG currently has an analysis and conclusion from a certified accountant, which states that Ms. Carluccio grossly and erroneously billed in excess of $8,335 and not to the ward's benefit. To date, I have no idea what the status of this investigation is or what the result is. I have documented proof requesting on behalf of my mother for the entire record file during the guardianship per Florida Statute 744517, dating back to December 14, 2020, and both the Guardian and OPPG has ignored the statutory right. Fast forward to August of 2020 when I discovered an estate sale that was being held by the husband of the Guardian in her company, Sure. The sale of this ward's property and real property was not authorized by the court. A private detective documented in his investigative report that Mr. and Mrs. Carluccio, in quotes, only sell what they do not want themselves. In the end, the end result was a final order by OPPG where my mother was to be reimbursed $187.94. I do not know why my mother's case and the other case were combined. To date, my mother has not been reimbursed, and the Guardian has completely fabricated, along with her lawyers, an invoice for $10,000 for my petulant behavior in filing complaints. The Guardian case was settled, and all invoices were paid and filed in November of 2020. Any non-licensed Guardian citizen would be punished immediately. Where is the accountability?
Thank you, Ms. Berlin, for your comments. We now move on to Sue Melendi, and our final speaker after her will be Myrna Ramos. Sue, you're now recognized.
Thank you, Ken. Thank you so much for the opportunity. Thank you for all your hard work on the task force and what we do on a regular basis, and thank you to all the members. I had written down some things in advance, and I also want to echo what was said by all of the advocates as well as Dr. Teresa Kennedy. My name is Susan Melendi, and I have a nonprofit to help educate and facilitate resolution and reform for individuals and families affected by guardianship. I would like to highlight some basic premises that I believe are a solid start and a foundation to change. One issue that I think the task force has recognized and has done a lot of work on, and I agree with, is tracking for cases by county and by state. I mean, until we know the real numbers, we can't get a handle on just how prevalent this is. AARP did an article a couple of months ago that they estimate 70,000 Floridians are subject to guardianship and over 3 million Americans. And, you know, I'm of the opinion that with people with advanced directives and loving family that care for them, that is completely egregious and unnecessary. A big point that I advocate for is ADA accommodations should be provided by people that need them, as well as any language barriers that are an issue should be addressed. 3, I agree, open hearings to provide transparency, accountable, and support from family, friends, and advocates. You know, if there's nothing to hide, there's no reason for the things not to be open to the public. And the board of the AIP should always have the benefit of attendance, whether it be by Zoom, whether they have to come in a care ride, but to have these people not be in attendance of their own lives that are going to be affected with their rights is completely unacceptable. 4, bad faith filings will have consequences that will include bar accountability, and all parties involved will be held accountable, including judges, including the chief judge. I mean, we talk so much about some bad guardians, but what about these families and these victims that spend hundreds of thousands of dollars of money that they don't have because somebody files a bad faith filing, a wrongful petition, but the case doesn't even end. Nobody's ever even held accountable. It just keeps perpetuating. 5, the individual will be treated with dignity and respect, and that all parties involved in the process will listen to them, and their wishes will be the guiding light throughout any process. I have formulated an affidavit that would follow a person from the very first meeting, and they will be represented by a guardian ad litem / advocate. 6, advanced directives, DPOAs, healthcare surrogates, wills, and trusts will not be removed by the court. The court should support the person that has been designated by the person and maintain that choice. GAL will support and assist person with the areas that they may need help. They should maintain as many rights as possible, and the DPOA or the GAL will ensure that they maintain their supportive decision making. Again, I thank you very, very much, and I wish you all health and a nice Thanksgiving.
Ken?
Thanks, Ms. Melendi.
Thank you,
Yeah.
Ken. Ken, 2 things. First, I'd like to thank you profusely for getting this task force together. And Luann Fleming, I believe, would call me to speak. And I do also, I know you have one other person, but Ray Contreras is on the phone. We're not going to be in attendance of any other meetings. Can you please be so kind? We were supposed to stop at noon. I believe we have a little more time. Can you let Mr. Contreras speak as well?
We'll add on one more speaker, but then we have to end it at that point, okay?
I understand. Okay, thanks.
Myrna Ramos, you're recognized. Ms. Ramos?
Yes. Can you hear me? I'm here.
Yes.
Yes, ma'am, we can.
I thank you for the opportunity to talk. I had spoken before. I had a friend who was put into guardianship totally against her will. And I'm going to play something, and I hope you can hear this, because this says it all. Hold on.
Ms. Ramos, we do not, public comment has to be your comment. We don't listen to videos and that type of thing. So
Okay. Well,
you want to speak,
what I
go.
want to say is I agree with the woman that just spoke, where I think that each individual has a right to appear on their own behalf in front of the judge. My friend was not given that opportunity. She was in the hospital 81 days when there was absolutely nothing wrong with her. How can you justify keeping someone who's healthy for 81 days in a hospital? What insurance would even cover you for 81 days when there's absolutely nothing wrong with you? And because her children did not want to take care of her, they ended up putting her away in a home. And she died there. She didn't want to be there. They said she couldn't go to court. She could have went. I would have volunteered to have taken her myself And they didn't let her do that. I met with her court-appointed attorney. That court-appointed attorney, what she did, she almost threw me out of her office. After I met with her, she called the hospital where my friend was at and said no more visitors for her and no more phone calls. How can you justify that? How can you justify having somebody in a hospital for 81 days and not allowed to have phone calls, not allowed to have visitors, not allowed to say anything, and then she's put in a home against her will? The last time I saw her was on Christmas Day, and then she died January 27th. But through the grace of God, I got to see her very quickly at hospice, and I prayed over her, and I asked God to take her home because I didn't want her to go back to where she was. And do you know what? 20 minutes later, God took her home because God knew that she should go home to him and not back to that facility where they put her in. That's not right. I live in Florida and I'm afraid to grow old in Florida. And she even issued a durable power of attorney and everything, and her attorney would not accept it. And I have it here in front of me. It's a damn shame what's happening to our elderly. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, Ms. Ramos. Thanks for being with us today. Our final speaker is Ray Contreras. Mr. Contreras, you're now
Thank you, Ken Burke.
Ray Contreras, you're now recognized.
Yes, thank you, Ken Burke. My name is Ray Contreras. Can you guys hear me okay?
Can you speak a little?
Speak up some, please, sir.
Sure. Can you guys hear me now?
A little bit better, but a little louder.
A little bit.
Okay. All right. I'll get the mic a little bit closer.
Better.
Great.
That's better. Thank you.
Okay. I'm here going to play a voicemail that my stepfather said, because I think it's important that we're all here.
Mr. Contreras, unfortunately, we do not allow, just to be fair to everyone else, we don't allow any recordings. We just hear from you and your comments. So if you would just make your comments and you can tell us the essence of what happened, it's fine within your 3 minutes. So we'll start your time again right now. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate it. No, I think it's important here to understand, I do appreciate everyone that's been on here and all the comments, and I have read through the final report, and there's a lot of positive things in there. The part that I want to focus on is this is really an industry that's unregulated, here in Florida. I mean, there's very little oversight. When the governor of Florida says there's no accountability, the first thing that happened was that everyone resigned in the Office of Elders Affairs in Tallahassee. And now we have someone new, Chantel Jones, which is on the call as well. And we haven't heard much from her, so far. And, this is a very sensitive industry for Americans. I mean, these are our elderly. These are our most frail and fragile people. And nothing's going on to protect them. I mean, in my case in particular, we have serious conflicts of interest. You have the court-appointed attorney being on the same LLC as the guardian since 20 years. We had a mediation, which I'm sure you've all read through, that, the court-appointed attorney brought out a gun and was threatening my mother and her lawyers. And the mediator in that case was David C. Brennan, who's the father of Sasha Brennan, who's been coming on these committees saying that everything's perfect and robust and the system shouldn't be changed. The sad thing is that there are laws in the books, many laws. I mean, there's laws about brandishing a gun. There's laws about the conflicts of interest. There's laws about picking these court-appointed attorneys on a rotating basis for incapacitation. They're not following them. This judge in particular replaced the previous court-appointed attorney with one of his friends because there was a lot of money involved. He did this sus sponte. He shouldn't have been allowed to do that. When we brought up to the judge that there was a conflict of interest, they're on the same LLC, nothing happened. When we filed a motion to remove the court-appointed attorney, nothing happened. When we filed a judicial review because they were restricting visitation, nothing happened. What I wanted to play for you today was a voicemail of my stepfather calling my mom repeatedly, asking for her to come over, asking to see her, that he was lonesome. His last words to me before he died was, "Ray, find the biggest law firm you can find and stop this racket." And unfortunately the people aren't with us anymore to be in this conversation. Like they're deemed incapacitated, even though my stepfather was still driving up until this point. He was driving 6 hours a day. I mean, if you met him, he had the least case of Alzheimer's you can think of. It was called sundowners. But of course, these predatory attorneys, they exaggerated it. And that's what needs to stop. You know, if you guys can't, you know, they say lawyers can't regulate other lawyers. And that's why I feel we need federal help in this, because the system is broken. According to the governor's words, there's no accountability. And so far, none of these predatory attorneys have been arrested. And if you want to send the message for this to stop, you have to put fear in them that if they do something wrong, like we've said before, there are many good attorneys, there are many good judges, but the bad ones should be in fear that if they cross the line, they're going to go to jail. And you guys haven't shown that kind of force so far to make them accountable. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gutierrez, for your comments. I will give one more opportunity. A person who we called on several times but didn't respond, to Luann Fleming. Is Luann now available to speak?
Yes, I'm Luann Fleming. I'm a national radio show host. Can you hear me? Okay.
Yes, you have 3 minutes, Ms. Fleming. Please go forward.
Okay, my name is Luann Fleming. I'm a national co-host radio show host. We've been co-hosting radio shows now on Faces Radio, on the Hidden Truth Revealed channel on Blog Talk Radio for 5.5 years. And many of our complaints have come from Florida. In fact, every one of these speakers I have been on today have been on to our radio show. We are to expose what has been happening into all the probate courts, not only in Florida, but across the country. So I just wanted to add that criminal enterprises should not be allowed in our courtrooms, for one thing. These attorneys, not only the attorneys, but many of the, I'll say, players have come in and basically run our courtrooms and used it for a criminal enterprise. So I'm really glad that this task force has come alive and has offered not just Brittany, but to all the innocent people out there that are consumed in these guardianships. But I also have Robin Osmond here. He's also one of my co-hosts, along with Hillary Hogan, everybody. So he would like to say a few things as well.
I just want to say that I believe that the problems that we're addressing are endemic to a system that is broken. I'm glad to see that we're taking steps to address them, but without transparency and accountability in our courts, without making it clear to the predators that these criminal acts will no longer be tolerated, without prosecution of the criminal activity that is endorsed and sanctioned by unethical courts, we will see no change. That must be a priority, and I hope that will be effectively addressed, not only through this task force, but going forward, both in Florida and nationally.
Right, and just remember, everybody, it's just not Brittany. We do need to take this into our hands. We need to become, as a nation, not only just in Florida, but across nationally. This has got to end. The suffering of all the people being forced into guardianships against their will should never be happening in the first place. So I thank the task force, Rick Block, Dr. Sam Sugar, Hillary Hogue, Sue Melindy, many of those advocates. Thank you so much. And for the task force, thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Fleming. And Ms. Fleming, can you give us the name of that person who also spoke? We try to keep a record of everyone who spoke.
Yeah, Robin Austin. He's a co-host with Families Against Court Embezzlement, Unethical Standards Face Us.
Thank you. I want to thank everyone who participated in public comment. We certainly appreciate your interest in the task force. This is our concluding meeting of the task force. I want to thank every member for your tremendous dedication and input. When we kicked this thing off, we said this is the most diverse task force ever established in the state of Florida for guardianships. We tried not to leave anyone out who has an interest in this topic from many different perspectives. Obviously, the discussions have been robust, have been enlightening. Obviously, and to Gina's point, there's never enough time, and there could be never enough meetings for us to thoroughly digest and talk about every aspect of guardianship. That's why one of the recommendations of this task force is a permanent body of the legislature created should have ongoing recommendations on an annual basis to the legislature and to the court system to improve the guardianship program, to make it so that the safeguards are there, that it's a system where the guardians can be proud of, the lawyers can be proud of, the judges can be proud of, the advocates can be proud of, the wards should have a sense of safety and security, and that the state of Florida has, Senator Bradley says, not just have a good system, but have the best system. I mean, we have a long ways to go in that regard, and this was a step in the right direction. I know there's certain folks on here who cannot advocate to the legislature. Sean, I'm looking at you. You certainly are in a role of the judiciary where you can't do that. But for the rest of us, those of us who are part of interest groups, I'm going to ask you to really take this report and talk with your individual legislators. You talking with the legislators you have a relationship with has a much bigger appeal than any lobbyist or any organization or any person going. If a legislator listens to the people in there who are constituents. And so that's the big message I'm going to leave you with. I look at Zane with AARP. I know you have a very effective operation of a lot of folks who have interest, and if those folks can get in touch with their legislator, and they don't need to be, they don't need to take, an hour of their time. It's just, hey, there's a task force that came up with 10 recommendations, Mr. Legislator or Ms. Legislator. Would you take them seriously and make it an effort to move on them? That's what the message should be. I mean, they don't have to become experts on this, but if they can take the recommendations we have in the report, the executive summary, and say to each legislator that they have a relationship, please move these along, that will have a great impact. Legislators, again, love hearing from their constituent on these types of things. We will have the report on the task force. Again, you as task force members will get full printed copies with all the additions to them, and we ask that within 2 weeks, if you can get your member perspectives at that point. Tom, is there anything I missed that we need to conclude on here?
No, I think that's it.
Okay. Thank you all so much again for your dedication. This final meeting of the task force is now adjourned. Thank you.
Happy Thanksgiving, everybody.